It is noon on Thursday. I'm Leanne Young. We're here in the CBC newsroom in Vancouver. Here's what you need to know right now. Just some breaking news. Massive plumes of dark smoke could be seen this morning near the port in North Delta. And our Jessica Chung is live there right now. So Jess, what is happening where you are?
Yeah, Leanne, so you can see that there's still smoke coming out of this building. It's definitely dissipated since this morning, but Delta and Surrey fire crews are still here tackling the blaze. You can see that they are dousing the building with water. If you look really closely, you can see some glints of actual flame in there as well. So this is definitely an active fire that they're still dealing with. Now, this fire broke out just after 9 a.m. this morning, and I spoke with the fire chief. This is at a building here that's an old mill that is going under demolition. And when I spoke to the fire chief, he actually said that there were demolition crews here when the fire broke out, but when fire crews got here, they were all outside. They were all accounted for, so they aren't looking into any injuries. So the focus really is turned to knocking the fire down. Now, yes, as I said, the sky is clearing. Crews are still working, but it was definitely a very different story, a different scene this morning, and the fire chief spoke on that. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Super heavy smoke and fire. The smoke is probably about 200 feet in the air. Black. We have Metro Environmental coming here because there was a lot of people phoning in because of the fire. Flames were going through the roof. And the Surrey and Delta crews did a really good job knocking it down.
Now, this land is owned by the Port Authority of Vancouver, and it says that it's not impacting any port operations. Metro Vancouver, though, is looking into this fire just because of the amount of smoke that it put into the air. So there are concerns about air quality. So they are telling people if they are susceptible to stay away from the area, close their windows, and try to stay safe from the smoke as much as they can. Now, in terms of what caused this, the fire chief did say that that is still under investigation. No indication yet into what caused the fire, but he doesn't believe it to be suspicious. So all focus right now is knocking down the flame as soon as possible, Leanne.
Okay, very good. That is our Jessica Chung live in Delta reporting for us. The BC government's bill to construct a multi-billion-dollar power line from Prince George to Terrace has been approved in the legislature. Premier David Eby says the North Coast transmission line is so important to the province's economy, he was willing to put it to a confidence vote. The line is meant to power critical mineral projects and LNG terminals in BC's north. Well, Island Health says the ICU at West Coast General Hospital is closed until further notice due to a staffing shortage. The 3-bed unit in Port Alberni serves all of Vancouver's Island's West Coast. In a statement, the health authority says many rural hospitals across BC have been struggling to find doctors and nurses trained to work in the ICU.
They've been on diversion week on, week off for the past 18 months, so it doesn't come as a big surprise. What comes as a surprise is this doesn't seem like it's going to be temporary based on the way that it was announced. We're hearing from the ICU staff in Comox. They've been alerted that they may be receiving some patients into Comox, and that facility is already quite overcrowded and is unfortunately already at capacity.
Patients in Port Alberni will be primarily diverted to Nanaimo. Island Health says the closure will be in place until adequate staffing can be provided. And that's it for me for now. Thanks for watching all morning. I'm Leanne Young. BC Today is next with Michelle Elliott. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The Jeffrey Epstein files are making headlines again this week. Donald Trump signed a bill to release the files after months of pressure. It is a moment in U.S. politics with many complexities and many implications. So we're taking your questions. What do you want to know about the Epstein story and what it says about the current state of U.S. politics? After 12:30, the Cambridge Dictionary word of the year is parasocial. What do you think of that term? And does it mean celebrity fandom has gone too far? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump signed the bill to release investigative files around convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Earlier, Republicans and Democrats, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, overwhelmingly voted in favor to release the files in a rare show of unity. The Justice Department now has just under 30 days to make the files public. However, it may withhold documents that are linked to open criminal investigations. Jeffrey Epstein was a New York hedge fund manager who was convicted for soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. He was indicted on federal sex trafficking charges in July 2019 and died in custody in August of that year. Now, this story is a complicated one, but one that is seen as reflective of where the Trump administration, the MAGA movement, and U.S. politics are right now. So we're taking your calls. What are your questions about the Epstein files story? What do you want to know about its impact and the current state of U.S. politics? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 1-800-825-5950. Or 604-669-3733. That's 604-669-3733. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. And if you're joining us on TikTok, you can leave a comment there. Joining us to help make sense of this all is Terri Givens. She's a political science professor at the University of BC. Hi, Terri. Thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
This story has been a long-standing story around the Epstein files, pressure on Donald Trump to release the files, his handling of it. It's very complicated, and it can rouse up strong emotions as well. We can see the online discourse around it. What do you see is at the heart of this story and why it is significant?
Well, there's many reasons why it's significant. First of all is that Donald Trump's name has been popping up in the Epstein files, the emails that have already been released. This has been an ongoing story, but it also ties back to issues around women and abuse and lots of the issues that came up around the Me Too movement. And so one of the things that I see kind of circling around this is, the ideas about believing women, the women who have come forward, and even, Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping up and saying she supports the victims. So it's also just a huge political story from so many different perspectives, including what's happening within the MAGA movement.
Yes, so many threads to pull on there, and I don't want to forget about the story around the women as well. So I'll make sure to ask you about that later on. I want to ask you about that turnaround, that shift in Donald Trump's position on releasing these files. What led to that, and how significant is it?
Well, it was just a tidal wave of support from, both Democrats and Republicans to release the files. I mean, this has been something that has been ongoing, and you've even heard a lot from MAGA folks about releasing the files. And so I think it just got to the point where Trump couldn't avoid it.
Okay, so what does it mean now that he has signed this bill? What should we be watching for?
Well, it's going to take a while to get through all this material. So, I actually am wondering how the Justice Department is going to deal with it. It's a huge amount of material. I was hearing a story that is something like 300 gigabytes of material. And also, are they going to try to go through and, edit any of it? You mentioned, open criminal cases. There's a lot of questions that are still outstanding around this. And so we're all wondering, okay, how are they going to manage this? And, are we really going to see all of the material?
We are taking your calls on this, trying to make sense of the headlines around the Epstein files story. This week, just yesterday, President Donald Trump signed the bill, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, that compels the release of these files around the investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. What are your questions about the Epstein files story? And what are your questions about what it means for U.S. politics right now? Trying to make sense and get clarity on this for you here on the show. Our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. And on TikTok, we're at CBC British Columbia. Wendy is calling us with a question from West Vancouver. Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm wondering if they're going to be able to get away with redacting the names of the assailants as well as the names of the victims.
Okay, so it goes to what kind of information we can actually expect, and we did mention that they can withhold documents that are related to open criminal investigations. What kind of names? What might we actually see here, Terri?
Well, there's already a lot of names out in the, with that have come out with existing documents that we've seen. So, to be honest, it's not clear yet what they're going to be able to redact. I suspect that a lot of this material will include lots of names. And, one question is it going to be a lot of Democratic names versus Republicans? But I think that it's going to be really difficult for them to get away with not giving out substantial material. They can say that, well, this is an active criminal investigation, but we already know, some of the names that have come out, include, educators, business people. So there's a lot of names that are already out there. So it's going to be difficult for them to turn around then and say that we have to redact these names.
And what about on victims? What are the limits there? I understand when it comes to child victims, there would be limits on what can be published.
Absolutely. So, anybody who's a minor under the age of 18, that's going to be something they'll have to take a look at. And, I think, we're going to have to see how they handle, but a lot of the women have stepped forward. Unfortunately, we know in the case of at least one, the person is no longer with us. And so there's a lot to be dealt with in terms of the victims as well. And the reality is we're still in the early stages of how they're managing it.
Okay. And you're talking about Virginia Giuffre.
That's right.
Giuffre.
Yes.
Okay. Who's been a central point in this story, of
Yeah.
course. And Wendy, you had another question there as well in terms of the timing and whether there can be some stalling techniques in terms of releasing these files. Are you there, Wendy?
Kind of stalling. Yeah, I'm there. Here. I'm wondering what kind of stalling techniques you might expect from the Trump administration.
Wendy, thank you very much. Yes, in terms of the timeline here, under 30 days, can they stall on that?
I think they'll try. They've obviously been stalling because Trump could have ordered these documents released at any point in time. So I suspect we'll use things like saying, "Oh, we're still redacting names," or there's criminal issues we have to deal with. So I'm not sure how much they can get away with beyond the 30 days, but I'm not a legal scholar, so I don't know the intricacies of that side of it. But I do think they for sure will try to. This has been a tactic we've seen with Trump over and over, delaying tactics, lawsuits, all kinds of things. So I do expect to see more stalling tactics.
What about what kind of pressure from the public are lawmakers facing? To see this kind of unified vote from both sides of the aisle, right? So what is the pressure there from the public, from their potential voters?
Well, I think the pressure is huge. And I think you saw it in the most recent round of elections that the Republicans did very poorly. They've been, supposedly standing up for, women and saying that, the pedophiles should be, dealt with. And There's been if you remember the whole QAnon situation when movement was around, this a theory that there were Democrats who were pedophiles when the reality is that there appear to be on both sides, and certainly Donald Trump is implicated in some of this.
What do we actually know when it comes to the presence of Donald Trump in these files or his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Let's just get to what we actually know.
Yeah, so that's been pretty open for a while. There's photographs, there's, in the most recent round, so there was a whole set of documents that came out in the last couple of weeks that have, mentioned Donald Trump multiple times. And then, of course, there's the women, not just the women related to Jeffrey Epstein, but there have been women who have made claims of sexual abuse by Donald Trump over the years. And so there's just this, large swath of information that has been trickling out for many, many years around Donald Trump. He's, of course, been involved in a civil case, and there were cases that came and then disappeared. So there's just a lot out there.
Obi is our next caller now from Mission. Hi, Obi. What are your questions about the Epstein files story?
Hi. So obviously we've seen this happen. Well, we've been hearing this in the news for a very long time. And my question is, how will governments and prosecutors in free societies around the world respond to the disclosure of these files? Because we've already seen the royal title of Andrew be revoked. Mm-hmm. We know that there's going to be more people affected by this, victims. People that are in different positions. What do you think will happen once these files get screened and eventually released?
Yeah, it's a good question, Obi. Thank you very much. What kind of reaction might we see from other countries?
Well, I think the reactions I've seen so far in the UK is kind of a damage control from the royal family, taking various steps along the way. I'm curious myself to find out, are there going to be any criminal charges in this situation? I think there's other countries that may be taking a look at this and trying to figure out, part of the issue, right, is, what kind of evidence is there besides the emails? Are people going to step forward, victims? And then thirdly, what kind of response are you going to see from prosecutors within these countries? So, these are very complicated cases. They can, take a long time to adjudicate. And I think that there's going to be some reluctance to, because of the kinds of people who are involved. So keep in mind that, these are very powerful people. What this has really uncovered is, a lot of privilege and people who felt like they could, continue to be involved with somebody who had been convicted of these certain charges and registered as a sex offender. People were still emailing with this person. And so I think, I'm unfortunately a little skeptical that, harsh measures are going to be taken, but, it's kind of a wait and see thing.
Yeah. Does that mean, what is your sense of the actual accountability that will come from this as well? Just following up on what you just said there.
Well, unfortunately, as we have seen in past situations, this is a much bigger situation than others we have seen in the past. I think back to some of the Hollywood scandals and other types of scandals that have come to the fore in the last, say, 15, 20 years. And sometimes there's accountability and sometimes there isn't. I think a lot of women are frustrated when it comes to the fact that that's why the Me Too movement blew up so big, because a lot of women have experienced these situations. And I know you wanted to come back to this part of the issue. And I think that is what we need to come back to is the issue of the victims, right? And because it's a sense of justice for them.
Yes. Why don't I, Obi, thank you very much for your question. I want to make sure to touch on that as well. The advocate, anti-trafficking advocate Lauren Hirsch was on CBC's The Current yesterday. She was asked about that whether the politics may be overshadowing the experience and the struggles of victims here. And she said for them, it's never been about politics. They had been let down by 5 administrations, not just this administration. And she felt that as of the signing of the bill, that there was a victory there. But prior to that, they felt that she felt that perhaps those women and their stories were being left behind. Yes, are you concerned that the politics is as big as the stories and the threads around the politics are, that they may be leading to the stories of the women and survivors falling by the wayside?
Yeah, I do think that is a problem. And even, the way that we're framing some of the questions around it, it's the focus on, what kind of material are we going to get and when. And I think, to me, the issue is these women have come forward. So this is just further evidence supporting what they have already said. And so I think to a certain extent, yes, it's a victory that these documents are coming out. But I also think for many women, and not just the victims of this particular situation, but beyond that, there's a lot of women who hope to see that this leads to greater, support for women who are victims, and really more of a focus on how do we get justice for these victims.
Let's take some more calls here. Again, if you have a question about the Epstein files story and what it says in particular about the current state of U.S. politics, you can give us a call now. Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. And our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. We have a question here from Colin through social media. Why is this coming now? Why couldn't this come out earlier, like perhaps before the 2024 election? Yes, what can you tell us about the timing here?
Well, the funny thing is this has come up. And I think the question is more talking about this current release. And, people look back to the Biden administration and say, they had access to this material. Why wasn't it released? And I think part of the response I've seen is that, well, this was part of an active investigation. And so that, I'm sure, is a component of it, that under previous administrations, even though they had this material and there had been a conviction, that they, there were active, investigations happening, criminal investigations that needed to be dealt with. And I think a lot of that was cut off, after the election. And of course, it wasn't certain what was going to happen, with the election and who was going to be in charge. So I think that, it's still frustrating in so many ways that this material is just now coming out because it's been known about for quite a while. But remember, back in January when people started asking Trump about it, or even Pam Bondi, it was, it was just, this material is it doesn't matter. We don't need to see it, whatever. There's just been a stalling tactic. So yeah, it's a big frustration, but I think we have to understand that it's a complicated criminal situation as well.
Colin, thank you for the email. Brent is next in Surrey now. Hi, Brent. What's your question about the Epstein file story?
Well, my question is, after his statements, before he even became president, about women and the way he treated them, I'm thinking of one in particular, and his track record of fiercely defending himself in his presidency, I want to know how you can expect to get justice. I mean, for these poor women and girls who were abused by this odious person.
Brent, thank you for your comment. I don't see a question in there, but just saying he doesn't have a lot of trust in terms of the outcome of this. A question here, a point from Paul on email to say 2 realities. Trump has not released the files because he wants justice for victims. He doesn't care about the women. He has released the files to dig up info on any famous men with Democratic Party leanings. Anything to do with Republicans or him will not be told to the public. Now, Trump has ordered new investigations into prominent Democrats along the same time, or around this same time as well, coinciding with the signing of the bill. So what are the politics around this when it comes to Republicans and Democrats, Terri?
Well, the reality is that there are Republican as well as Democrat names, or Democratic Party members' names out there. And so I would say that there's they may try to, keep the focus on Democrat or people who have ties to the Democratic Party, I should say. But I don't think that's going to hold. There's just so much material and so much material that has come out in recent times. I think we're going to see potential leaks. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that if people on the Republican side feel that, there's going to be kind of a blowback if, the focus isn't bipartisan, that they may let some of that material loose.
We're going to break here for our TV audience. We'll see you back here in 2 minutes from now. You're with BC Today. And one last call here with Peter in White Rock. What's your question, Peter?
If your guest can explain how the American voters could not only elect Trump once, but twice after the Stormy Daniels affair, after when he bragged on the, quote, Hollywood Access tapes about assaulting women, after he was convicted of sexual assault and so on and so on. How can you explain that?
So he was convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records.
That too, yeah.
So, Peter, thank you. I think your point is about the public support for Donald Trump that continues. Do you see that continuing here? We've seen, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been a very loyal supporter, now speaking up and having been called a traitor. So where do you see support for Donald Trump following this?
Well, his numbers are underwater. He's below 40%, in terms of support, and broadly, to answer that question, it's very difficult to understand why he was elected again, and the reality is that people were looking at the economy. There were culture war issues, although you could claim that this is also a culture war issue. So I would say that we're seeing cracks within the MAGA movement right now. How deep those will go, it's hard to say. But yeah, I wish I had a clear answer for you. I can share some data at some point that shows who voted for Trump and their rationales. But yeah, it's really frustrating to see that somebody who was a convicted felon was reelected.
There's, as I mentioned, many threads to this, including what it does mean for the MAGA movement. We'll have to talk about that another time. Terri Givens, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terri Givens is a political science professor at UBC. It is now 12:29. You're with BC Today. I see more emails coming in here as well. Again, you can send them to us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And coming up in our next half hour, we'll bring you some of your email response to yesterday's signing or BC's announcement around a new agreement to relax interprovincial trade rules and requirements. Some of you had thoughts about that and concerns as well. So we're going to read some of your emails in our next half hour on that. Big news yesterday. Plus, we'll talk about what has been named the word of the year by Cambridge Dictionary, and it is parasocial. And we will talk about that word. Have you used it? Have you heard of it? And what does it say about celebrity fandom and celebrity culture right now? All of that coming up after this CBC News Update with Liam Britton.
Good afternoon. A major fire has engulfed a Delta industrial site this morning. Crews are putting out flames north of the Alex Fraser Bridge at a former mill. Delta Fire says they were called just after 9, and Surrey crews are assisting. Smoke is highly visible in the area, and Metro Vancouver is monitoring air quality. Nearby residents are urged to avoid the area and keep windows closed. Prince George Mounties have removed an explosive device from a home on 8th Avenue that prompted evacuations yesterday. Mounties first discovered the device while executing a drug search warrant, and they say that investigation remains ongoing. And Heiltsuk First Nation says the barge sinking along the Central Coast has been moved to a safer location, but the removal of its freight containers has been delayed. The nation says crews are holding off due to increasing winds in the area. The plan is for the load to be split between 2 barges and then shipped to Seattle, the vessel's original destination. And those are your CBC News headlines from Vancouver.
Liam, thank you very much. That's Liam Britton in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. You're with BC Today, and yesterday we told you about the BC government signing an agreement with Ottawa and other provinces and territories aimed at relaxing interprovincial trade requirements. And the Canadian Mutual Recognition Agreement will mean products that are approved in one province won't need added testing or approvals in another. And it takes effect next month, although food and alcohol will be excluded. We spoke with the Business Council of BC yesterday, and we got your emails. Marjorie writes, professional standards need to be equalized as well as manufacturing. There should be one standard of excellence for everything across the country. Ingrid writes, I've been wondering why we're just looking at products for barrier removal. I think we also need to look at qualifications. A teacher coming from Ontario has additional requirements they have to meet here in BC. Scott, though, has his concerns. He writes, regarding the issue of allowing products okayed by one province to be sold in other provinces without further oversight, this is very worrying. What an opportunity this presents to game the system. If I'm producing a product, all I need to do is somehow persuade one province to set very low standards for that product. I now have free rein to sell that low quality, perhaps dangerous product across the country. Without some body setting minimum standards for safety and setting minimum standards for quality across the country, we consumers have no protection. Thank you very much for your emails. You can always send us your thoughts, of course, anytime to our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. Welcome back. You are with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. So glad to have you with us this afternoon. And I want to remind you as well, it is that time of year. Our annual Make the Season Kind campaign is just around the corner. So you can go ahead and mark Friday, December the 5th. We will have a full day of special programming, all to inspire you to be kind to those in need. We'll bring you here a special 3-hour edition of BC Today along with North by Northwest. And I'll be joined by Margaret Gallagher. We'll bring you live music and special guests right here outside CBC at 700 Hamilton Street in downtown Vancouver. We'll be on stage as well on the CBC Plaza. So come on down and join us, or tune in, of course, from anywhere in the province. And you can donate anytime to the food bank of your choice in BC. Just go to cbc.ca/kindbc. You can find the Donate Now button there and choose your food bank from the 111 in the drop-down menu. That's in British Columbia. Again, cbc.ca/kindbc. And as soon as you make your donation, within hours, you will receive a tax receipt. 12:34 now, and as we near the end of 2025, we're getting, the various proclamations or reflections on the year that was, and Cambridge Dictionary has proclaimed the word of the year is parasocial. If you haven't heard this, it is an adjective that describes a strong but one-sided connection that a person has with someone they don't know, perhaps a celebrity or an influencer or a fictional character, even an AI chatbot. Well, the editor of Cambridge Dictionary says its website has seen spikes in searches for that word, parasocial, and the choice was inspired by Taylor Swift's celebrity and the way her fans, the Swifties, feel toward her. We're going to talk to someone who studies this phenomenon, and we are taking your calls. Have you used the term parasocial this year? I see it online all the time. What does it say about the current culture of celebrity fandom? Do you think celebrity fandom's gone too far, or is this just the same thing as what we've seen for decades and decades now when it comes to people being real fans of someone? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. That's 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And if you're joining us on TikTok, you can leave your comment there. Bree McEwan is a communications professor at the University of Toronto and joins me now. Hello, Bree. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What do you think of the term parasocial?
I think it's really interesting that we're getting parasocial as the word of the year in 2025, when I think it was coined by Horton and Wall in 1956.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? So it's not new to us in the field, but I think that there are a lot of things happening this year, certainly in pop culture, certainly with the way that we engage with celebrities these days, that maybe makes it feel more top of mind for people. And I think it's also, it's sort of escaped academia, and the average person is using the term more than perhaps we saw in the past.
And is the meaning the same, or has it taken on a new meaning given the online world and the way that people are developing these kinds of, one-sided relationships with their favorites?
Yeah, so I went and looked up how Cambridge defined it to see how the meaning was the same or different. And theirs is a connection that someone feels between themselves and a famous person. And that is pretty much the original meaning. Originally, it was for characters on radio. And so radio and TV shows where you would start to feel like you had a relationship with a thing that didn't exist, right? With a TV character. And I think we've now translated that to celebrity and thinking about the sort of characters that celebrities put forward and perform for us. And it's still being kind of a one-sided relationship, even though the celebrity is, an actual person, not a TV character.
Right. It's the image that you've perhaps, fallen in love with.
Exactly.
So what does this tell us about the culture of celebrity fandom right now then?
Well, I think we have a lot more access and in different ways, right? So not to date myself, but I remember, my mom getting her People magazine and getting to read about celebrities sort of once a week. Or maybe seeing, Entertainment Tonight and getting to that once a week show about what's happening in Hollywood.
Right.
But now if you want to, right now, if you want to, you can, get on TikTok and you can follow not only your celebrity, but you can follow other people who like to talk about your celebrity, and you can be part of this overall community. And you end up with these sort of layers of parasocial relationships in the way that you engage with your celebrity fandom.
Yes, there's that as well. You become part of a community. I feel as if that's new. We just showed a photo of Blackpink. So the Blinks, for example, if you're part of the Bayhive. Want to hear from our listeners on this, to our audience. What are your thoughts on the term parasocial? And what does it tell you about the state of celebrity fandom right now? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. Hey, maybe you are a fan of someone and you have that parasocial term applies to you and you've used it yourself. Give us a call, and you can email to bctoday@cbc.ca. My guest is Bree McEwan, professor of communications at U of T. Brody is calling us from Comox. Hi, Brody. What do you think of this term, parasocial?
Hi there. The term parasocial, when it comes down to it, is about illusion, really, if I'm not mistaken. And that's exactly what it is. The dominance of celebrity culture has enveloped everybody for decades and decades. But I think we're seeing that phase out, and we're all realizing that the illusion it's just a veil, and more important is the importance of us. Each individual person deserves to be their own star. Sure, these people are inspiring, and that's wonderful, and it's always been that way. Inspiring people who do these wonderful feats of art and that sort of thing are gonna make us feel connected to some greater spirit. But I think that with the definition of parasocial, it kind of is a joke to me, because establishes the fact that it's an illusion, and we all need to be more true to ourselves. And so in 2025, coming into 2026, I think it's very cool to embrace yourself and embrace the star that you are, as opposed to what you think someone else really determines as
Is this, Brody, I love that so much. Facing the star that you are. And I wonder, is that something that you've been trying to do, given, as we heard from Bree, if you want, you can learn anything and everything and stay updated on any number of celebrities, even if you didn't want to. We're all kind of inundated with that information. But Brody, for yourself, how have you tried to do that in the face of the onslaught of online information, like making sure that you stay true to yourself?
I try to keep an arm's distance from online stuff. I certainly, I do, look at the news every day, and I try and find the right sources of information. But when it comes down to art as well, I just think it's really wonderful to pursue your community, pursue the folks around you, and that can go national or international. Like, I love artists across the world.
Sure.
But for myself, I'm very happy in my life, in the life that I've pursued.
Yeah. Brody, such great insight. Thank you very much. It was very refreshing to hear about, hey, what about you as the main character? Bree, are we losing that sense of self, do you think?
I don't know about the sense of self, but we do see some changes in the media environment. Remember when the Time cover person of the year was you? Right? And now it was Taylor Swift. And so I think that's actually an interesting change in the media that Brody's putting out, that when social media, social network sites first started becoming a thing, it was about showcasing yourself to a network of folks that you might know. And we've seen more and more kind of incursion from, content creators, celebrity culture, pop culture, that now, when you scroll through something, you're getting less and less of connections from folks that you actually know, and more some variation of a curated persona that is mediated, whether it's from a giant celebrity, or whether it's from what we might call a nano influencer who has about 5,000 or less folks. But it's this kind of curated version that's meant for consumption, rather than hey, here's what I randomly had for lunch today, which we used to joke about at the beginning of the social media.
I may still do that once in a while. But what does this tell us then about, I imagine people are aware that when it comes to famous people, there's a media strategy there, right? That what you see is, as we heard, an illusion. It is, it's curated. So is there a media literacy that's needed as well when it comes to consuming this kind of communication?
So it really varies how much people are aware that there is a media strategy. Our brains are kind of wired to think that things are authentic and that they're true. And we really have to work around we really have to think about it, that there's a strategy. I remember talking to someone a few years ago when Twitter was Twitter, that managed a major Twitter account for someone. And I was like, do you think people know that it's you in the background, right? This media consultant, instead of the actual person? He's like, of course they do. I don't think that's the case. I think that we often take the messages at face value. And so people can get a little confused when it's actually some sort of media strategy, or they said this over here, but then their media messaging said this,
right?
And they don't realize necessarily that it's different teams and that it's curated, and that's all, depending on the level of celebrity, it can be very, very thoughtful about what's put out there. And it's not necessarily reflective of the actual person living an actual life.
I can't even imagine the kind of strategy that goes behind Taylor Swift announcing an engagement or putting out an album. It's a lot of planning, I'm sure. We have an email here from Leela who writes, I have to admit, I've never had one of these kinds of one-sided relationships with anyone famous, and totally do not understand how they can begin and be so serious. No matter if it's a member of royalty, sports, or entertainment, I would like to understand it better, but not sure I ever will. Parasocial reminds me of paragliding. I think our people are a bit in over their head in thinking they could have an actual connection with someone so-called famous. I know that you study interpersonal connections as well, and you've written about it, Bree. So does this reflect anything in terms of diminishing of our ability or capacity to create in real life interpersonal connections and relationships?
Oh, I think it's often complementary, right? It's, because you do get these sort of community interactions in fandoms. There is an initial, I think some of the callers are pointing this out, like, I don't understand having this deep of a relationship. In the initial parasocial literature, they were trying to see it as an abnormality. Like, how are people getting so wrapped up with these characters that are now suddenly brought to life on the radio and TV in a new way? And over time, the research has really shifted towards it's actually sort of a normal human relational development process that as we get more information about someone, we feel closer to them. But there is the kind of pure parasocial. I really feel like this is a relationship I'm having that goes, kind of a step too far for a lot of people. And this semi-parasocial, which a lot of us have, we're sort of interested, like, oh, there was an engagement. That's exciting for them. But we realize it doesn't have a deep impact on our own lives.
You're not getting invited to the wedding.
She told us we can't come to the wedding, right? And so the idea that it affects, that now suddenly, because we have this kind of interaction with celebrity, we can't have relationships in our face-to-face life. That doesn't really track in the research. A lot of this sort of mediated connection is complementary to our day-to-day interactions.
Isn't that interesting? It's not a binary. Either you're online or you're in the real world. Do you think we can, and I take your point that this has existed for decades. So can we be a little bit too derisive when it comes to either the term parasocial or just the way that this fandom is and exists?
Sometimes I think so, right? Like, I tell my kids sometimes we don't want to yuck someone's yum, right? So like if it's harmless and it's fun, like let people have fun with their fandoms and their interactions.
Sure, go ahead and join the beehive. Go ahead and be a little monster. We have an email though from Scott who writes, "It would be better to use the already existing term imaginary." Okay, Scott, thank you. Thank you very much. bctoday@cbc.ca. You can let us know your thoughts on the term parasocial. So Cambridge Dictionary has chosen that as the word of the year. And this comes out basically basing it on Taylor Swift's celebrity and when she announced her engagement and an increasing search for that term parasocial and what it actually means. It's this kind of one-sided relationship with someone who is famous, a celebrity. And so let us know what you think of that term and what does it say about celebrity culture? Do you think it's gone too far, celebrity fandom, or is this just ever thus, the way it has been for decades? Did you have a poster on your wall growing up? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. Ian is calling us now from Victoria. Hi, Ian.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I do have I agree with Brody, earlier caller.
Yeah.
It is all a complete illusion, and it primarily comes through the internet. You understand, I'm coming from the standpoint of somebody who doesn't have cable, who doesn't have Wi-Fi, is not interested in that whole mass media thing.
Yeah.
I take life as it comes, the things that are around me, and when it comes to people, say, just using Taylor Swift as an example, people learning about her online, and then further to that, forming what they call communities of other Swifties online. And they turn to this online experience for what they consider to be community, when community is actually your neighbors and the people who are around you. And if you start to feel that your community is somewhere out there in the ether, you lose sight of the people you're actually interacting with. And that's a terrible thing to do. It's the issue of community. It's completely distracting.
Yeah.
And if anything's going to save us from the terrible things, it's just looking each other in the eye and saying good morning, and that is your community.
Oh.
The online stuff it's just it's nothing. It really is nothing.
Ian, thank you very much. I'm glad you have your radio, which I think is what you're listening to us on.
I've been a CBC radio addict since the late 90s.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Ian, great to hear from you. What a great point. It's really about maintaining community. If you're looking for that connection and just looking at your neighbor and saying hello, good morning. What are your thoughts on what he had to say there, Bree?
So where I was saying before that Parasocial does follow these social processes, Ian's also right that with an actual other person that we have an actual other relationship with, we start to become interdependent over time. I think Ian's mourning the loss of something we call third places or third spaces, where you sort of go and gather with your neighbors in person. And a lot of that has shifted online. It doesn't necessarily have the same kind of social support and connections, and doesn't necessarily have the same kind of interdependence that we see in the development of interpersonal relationships. And so if that's your, sort of only social outlet, there's very few people for who that's their only social outlet, though, I want to clarify, then yes, you would be missing the development of these more personal relationships. These are important, and we use lots of different kinds of channels to connect with the world around us. Sometimes in our small neighborhood Facebook groups, and sometimes in these sort of broader, bigger like Reddit boards and this kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Those small Facebook groups. I do make it a point to say hello to my neighbors as well, for sure. I do spend a lot of time online, though. So, Ian, thank you very much. If you want to join our conversation about the term parasocial and celebrity fandom and celebrity culture, give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. Still love Brody's point as well about being your own star. And Bree, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence right now and how it has become ubiquitous online. What impact does that have on this conversation around parasocial relationships?
Yeah, this is a current and hot conversation among academics who study AI and chatbots and parasocial. There's a whole field of media psychology that's just sort of ready to go for this. Like, we're very excited as academics.
Yeah, can I nerd out anymore? Yeah.
Right. But I think it's still like kind of an open question that people are researching. Is it parasocial to have an interaction with a chatbot? We're not quite sure, right? Because you do get that sense of development. You do get that sense of you're becoming, maybe they feel supportive to you. A lot of chatbots are designed to be social support. But there is also the point that there's no there in the background. There's no real entity that you're forming a relationship with. And so it's not parasocial in the same sense as how we've applied it to media, but I think there are similar cognitive processes in play of we anthropomorphize a lot of stuff, right?
Yes.
We form relationships with all kinds of, agents and celebrities and things, et cetera, chatbots. And so it's really difficult to sort of take that, natural human process out of it. And so you're starting to see more research on folks who are, engaging in supportive communication with chatbots, engaging in relationships with chatbots, and also what happens when those relationships go away as well.
That's another kind of fraught area when it comes to this, for sure. So great to talk to you about this. Thank you very much. It's great to see your insights into what we're looking at when we talk about the term parasocial. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bree McEwan is a communications professor at the University of Toronto. It is 12:55 now. Okay, this is real, not parasocial, not AI. BC women's soccer fans are, of course, cheering following Vancouver Rise's victory at the Northern Super League. The championship party at Vancouver's Hollywood Theatre had players, coaches, and fans basking in the celebration. And CBC spoke to a few of them about what Rise's first victory means to them. And we did also catch up with Vancouver Rise FC's president, Sinead King, and player Christine Tynan.
It's the first time I went. I really liked it. Joined the supporter group, and then I ended up going to the Rise party against Ottawa. And then I went to their final, and then I went to their other event a few days ago, and now I happen to be here.
I play soccer, so I'm really excited about this because I hope I can get on this team when I'm older.
We're absolutely in love with these women, and we're so proud. Women in sports, finally, this has happened. We've always loved watching the girls, but to have a proper league is fantastic. So, yeah, we're all in, baby.
So tonight is a celebration, and although the season is finishing, this is still just the beginning.
I think this personifies the power of women's sport and what can happen when women's sport gets the respect and investment that it deserves. We see fans in the crowd, we see little girls, getting signatures from their players, their idols. We see little boys doing it as well. It inspires a whole generation, and it's a privilege for us to be doing it.
2025
I think that's the most special part about this league. It's giving these athletes a platform to be able to show what's possible. For me, growing up, I had always said I wanted to be a Vancouver Canuck because I never saw anything else. And so that's, for me personally, what's really important about this. It's showing what's possible and allowing kids to dream.
That's a great chant. Yes, I have seen the crowds at Vancouver Rise games, and they are so fantastic. The energy, the warmth. Seeing them at Swangard Stadium, so fabulous. Congratulations to the team. What a thrill. Of course, and much more on that as we keep following the sport and their rise in the new league, of course. An email here from Norman on Parasocial. Just a quick off-topic mention. My daughter, Shari Dale, had a book of poetry published in 2022 called Parasocial Butterfly. I'm delighted that the Cambridge Dictionary is catching up. Yes, she's ahead of her time, Norman. Thank you very much for that little proud father there. BC Today at cbc.ca.